The warning. The autumn rain had been falling since morning, turning the city streets into rivers of gray. Robert Chen sat alone in his usual corner booth at Morrison's Cafe, the same spot he'd claimed every Thursday for the past 3 years since his wife Helen had passed. At 62, he found comfort in routines, in the familiar smell of coffee and the gentle murmur of other diners. He was a successful man by any measure. His construction company had built half the buildings downtown. But success had taught him to be cautious, even suspicious. Too many people had wanted something from him over the years. The waitress brought his order, the house special, a generous plate of roast chicken with all the trimmings. Robert nodded his thanks and reached for his fork when a small voice cut through the cafe's quiet hum. "Please don't eat that food." Robert looked up, startled. A boy of about 9 or 10 stood beside his table, dripping wet from the rain. His clothes were worn thin, clearly too small, and his sneakers had holes that let in the weather. But it was his eyes that caught Robert's attention, wide, urgent, almost frightened. "Excuse me," Robert said, his tone sharper than intended. "The food, sir. Please, you can't eat it." The boy's voice trembled, but he didn't back away. The cafe went quiet. Other diners turned to watch. Robert felt his face flush with irritation. Another scheme, he thought. Another person trying to get money from him. "Young man, I don't know what you're trying to pull, but I suggest you leave before I call the manager." The boy's thin shoulders sagged, but he held his ground. "I know you don't believe me, but I'm telling the truth. That food, something's wrong with it. I saw what happened in the kitchen." Robert's jaw tightened. He'd heard every trick in the book. "And I suppose you want money to tell me more." Tears welled in the boy's eyes, but he shook his head firmly. "No sir, I just don't want you to get sick. Or worse." Something in the child's voice gave Robert pause. It wasn't the practiced plea of a con artist. It was genuine fear, but years of guarding himself against manipulation had built walls around his heart. "Manager," Robert called out, raising his hand. The boy flinched but didn't run. "Please," he whispered one more time. Tom Morrison, the cafe owner, hurried over. He was a broad man in his late 50s with kind eyes that had seen plenty of street kids over the years. "What's the problem here?" Tom asked. "This child is harassing me," Robert said coldly. "I'd like him removed." Tom placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Come on, son, let's get you dried off and find you something to eat." But the boy pulled away. "Mr. Morrison, you need to listen. In your kitchen, about 20 minutes ago, I was looking through the back window, hoping maybe someone would give me some scraps. I saw your cook, the new one with the tattoos. I saw him drop something into this man's plate. A powder." He looked around to make sure no one was watching, but I saw it from outside. Tom's face went pale. "That's a serious accusation. I know what I saw," the boy said quietly. The cook kept checking his phone and looking nervous. Then when he plated this gentleman's food, he took out a small packet and emptied it over everything. "I've been trying to find the courage to come in and say something for the past 10 minutes. Robert watched Tom's expression change from skepticism to concern. The cafe owner had hired a new cook just last week, someone who'd come with decent references but whom Tom admitted he didn't know well. "Wait here," Tom said, his voice suddenly serious. He disappeared into the kitchen. Robert and the boy stood in awkward silence. The child was shivering now, whether from cold or fear. Robert couldn't tell. Despite himself, Robert felt his anger beginning to crack. "What's your name, son?" he asked, more gently this time. "Marcus, sir. Marcus Webb. You been on the streets long, Marcus?" The boy nodded. "Since my grandmother died 6 months ago. She raised me after my parents passed. There wasn't anyone else." Robert's chest tightened. He thought of his own grandson, living comfortably 3 states away, surrounded by love and warmth. This child had nothing. Tom emerged from the kitchen, his face grim, holding a small empty packet and his phone. "I've called the police. Marcus was right. I found this in Jake's locker, and when I confronted him, he tried to run out the back. My dishwasher stopped him." He looked at Robert with troubled eyes. "Robert, I'm so sorry. I don't know what was in that powder, but we're having the food tested. Jake's been arrested before, apparently, for assault. I should have checked more carefully." Robert stared at his untouched plate, then at Marcus. The boy had saved him from who knows what. Poison, severe illness, perhaps something even worse, and Robert had been ready to have him thrown out into the rain. Shame washed over him, deeper than any he'd felt in years. He stood slowly and walked to where Marcus stood, still dripping, still shivering. Robert removed his own coat, a fine wool overcoat that had cost more than he liked to admit, and draped it over the boy's shoulders. "Marcus," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you an apology. And probably my life." The boy looked up at him with those same honest eyes. "You don't owe me anything, sir. I just couldn't let something bad happen when I could stop it." Robert felt something break inside him, something that had been frozen since Helen died. Here was this child, who had nothing, who was hungry and cold and alone, and his first thought had been to help a stranger. While Robert, who had everything, had assumed the worst. "Tom," Robert said, turning to his old friend, "could you make us both a fresh meal? A big one, and perhaps some hot chocolate for Marcus." "Already on it," Tom said with a warm smile. As they sat down together, Robert really looked at the boy for the first time. Beneath the dirt and worn clothes was a bright, thoughtful child who deserved so much better than the hand life had dealt him. Over the next hour, as police came and went, and as they shared a meal, Marcus told his story. His grandmother had worked as a seamstress until arthritis crippled her hands. They'd managed on her small savings until she fell ill. After she died, Marcus had been on his own, trying to avoid the system that would separate him from the only neighborhood he knew, where his grandmother was buried. Robert listened, really listened, in a way he hadn't listened to anyone in years. When the meal ended, Robert made a decision that felt as natural as breathing. Marcus, I have a large house that's been far too empty for far too long. I'm also a stubborn old man who's forgotten how to trust people. I think we might be able to help each other. Would you consider staying with me, at least for now? I'll get the legal matters sorted, make sure everything's done properly. Marcus's eyes widened. You mean it? I do. You saved my life today. But more than that, you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. You reminded me that kindness still exists, that people can still surprise you in good ways. I'd be honored if you'd let me return the favor. That was 3 years ago. Now Robert is 65, and Marcus is 13. The boy excels in school and has taught Robert how to laugh again. They visit Helen's grave together on Sundays, and Robert tells her about the grandson she would have loved. The house is full of life again, full of Marcus's friends and homework and the beautiful noise of a child growing up. Robert's company now has a program that hires and trains young people aging out of foster care. Marcus helped design it, and every Thursday, they still go to Morrison's Cafe, where Tom always saves them their favorite booth. They never order the house special anymore, but not because they're afraid. They order it because it reminds them of the day everything changed. The day a homeless child's courage and compassion taught a wealthy man the true meaning of abundance. Sometimes the greatest riches we find are the ones we stop long enough to see. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder about the power of kindness. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories that celebrate the goodness in everyday people, and leave a comment below telling us about a time when a stranger's kindness changed your day. Your stories inspire us to keep sharing these moments of hope.